Hey there. I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to the next episode of the Personal Branding for Professionals video podcast. As a part of the series, we spotlight powerful personal brands across the globe to inspire today's professionals. I'm your host, Kirti Vaidya, and today's video is about something that will really set you up for 2021. Now, when you look at job hunting, and if you've experienced this before, you know that this process is very hectic and time consuming. There can be weeks and months of hard work before you see any results. It can be about staying up late to submit that one application before you go to sleep, only to wake up and do that all over again. Now, I get it. Job hunting is very hectic, but does it really have to be? In this video, through this conversation, I am hoping to walk you through the strategies that you can use to make your job hunting process simple and efficient, and that will also help you lessen the window before you have that dream job offer in your hand. I hope that I was able to cover all the aspects of job hunting in this conversation. But do let us know if you feel that there is any one aspect that you would like to focus on particular, and I will try to get it in the next one. Today is Julia Rock. She's the owner of Rock Career Development, which is a career solutions firm that helps ambitious Black professionals break through career plateaus to earn more income and secure fulfilling job opportunities. Julia is a career and leadership development coach, a certified professional resume writer, and a certified employment interview professional. I'm so excited for you to meet Julia and be a part of our conversation. Let's begin. Welcome, Julia. It's a pleasure to host you. And personally, I have been waiting for this interview for a long time, and I really want to understand how personal branding is going to help someone to find their dream job.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And this is an honor to be here. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you.
And I think given the current conditions where people are searching for their jobs and many people are getting laid off and they're trying for new opportunities, the others are trying to find themselves because they get time to discover themselves now. I think today's session is going to benefit a lot of people out there, and particularly this question has been requested for a lot of times, so I thought that you would be the best person to help us out here.
So thank you. I'm hoping that we can provide some insight for everyone, and hopefully we'll be able to help them in their job search going forward.
Absolutely. So we will start with how you began in this industry. So right now you are contributing to the financial industry, but from there to being a career coach and a personal branding expert and a resume strategist, how did it all begin?
So it's really funny because I started my career in I started my career in college. I started studying finance, and that's what I was doing. My dad did finance, and I love finance too. But over time, as I thought about, well, how am I going to get out and actually get a job? Because it's fine to have the knowledge, but how do you actually go about getting a job? And so I spent a ton of time in the career services office at my college, and I just soaked up everything that they were sharing, every workshop they had, I lived in the coordinators' offices. I mean, if I wasn't there a day, I was like, hey, I would get the email, hey, we didn't see you today. Hopefully we see you tomorrow. So I spent so much time there. And that really helped me to build a love of being able to position yourself. And because in order for you to get a job, you have to position yourself differently from everyone else. And so I kind of became obsessed with that almost. And so I started writing resumes for friends and helping them with interviews, just because I had soaked up so much knowledge and I wanted to share it with other people. And I was doing it for free. It's just something like I said, I became passionate about, because if you can figure that out, you can have whatever opportunity you want if you know how to position yourself. So that's really how I got started. So I'm not going to date myself on here, but it was 100 years ago where I started writing for friends. And like I said, I just continued to grow that passion for wanting to help people position themselves differently in the marketplace.
Julia, when we consider today's professionals, why do you think personal branding is important for them?
Because there's so well, the first thing is that there are so many kind of competitors in the place, right, in the marketplace, at work or what have you. And so the question is, how can you stand out? What makes you different? What makes people relate to you? What value do you offer that's separate from everyone else? And that's really where the personal brand comes in. Because, for example, there are plenty of people that can be an IT developer, right? But the question is, what's separate about your skills? What is separate about you that you bring to the marketplace? What perspective that do you have? That's really why it's important, because then that'll also drive the conversations that you're able to have, the way that you're able to network, the way that you're able to show other people that, hey, this is the value that I can bring to our conversations. So it's so important because it sets you apart, and it attracts people to you in terms of whether they want to bring you an opportunity, whether or not they want to partner with you, they want to give you a job, whatever it might be, or just to be part of your circle. Your personal brand is what's going to attract these folks. But if your personal brand sounds like everyone else, or you don't have one, it's hard to differentiate. So that's really why it's important, is because it sets you apart from whether it's the competition or your counterparts in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think 2 decades back, if we would have talked about this, people generally had the tendency of handing out their business cards and then talking about, oh, this is the service that I can offer, so contact me anytime. But now that we are in this digital era where we have a plethora of options that we can choose to build our personal brand, I think it becomes very easy for anyone to get started on their journey. It definitely might look overwhelming at the first, but once they get started and concentrate only on the next step, one step at a time, then I think they can do a pretty good job at showcasing who they actually want to be viewed as in this world.
And I think that's such a good point that you make there, is that you don't have to be overwhelmed by trying to do everything, right?
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to be on every platform trying to show who you are. What's most important is that, what is my skill set? What is it that I want to be known for? And how can I share that with the world? And that's, for me, career coaching and helping people to develop themselves professionally is something I'm passionate about. If I never had another platform, I would stand on a corner with a bullhorn and talk about, all the things that I'm passionate about from a career perspective and how to help people. So once you have that mindset and that's what's driving you, you don't have time to get lost in, or get overwhelmed, because you know what your purpose is, you know what you're trying to share, you know what you want to offer the world.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you make there, because today, all of us, we usually have this fear of missing out, that, okay, I'm not on this platform. Am I going to miss out on my target audience? What is going to happen? Maybe I'm not going to build my brand in an as effective way as the other person. And then they just get confused. So it's a lot of platforms they're trying to be present on, but they might not actively engage with those people on those platforms. And that makes it very confusing, because that sends out a very confused definition of who you are to your audience. So it definitely can depend on who your target audience are. You can choose your platforms accordingly, but I believe that in your personal branding journey, there's no right or wrong, there's only your way. So as long as you can stay true to that, I don't think that you would have any barrier in your journey.
And when you think about what personal branding is, the idea is that this is how you want to be perceived, and for someone to perceive you a certain way, that's also how they're going to connect with you or relate to you. So if you're on a billion platforms, then there's no, even if people are responding to you, you're not responding to them, and you're not building the relationships. So you're not going to be able to drive that enforcement of the personal brand in someone's head, because they don't see you. They see what you post, but they don't see that you're a real person, or that you're someone who's engaging. And so people are attracted to brands that they can relate to and that they can connect with. So you can spend your time trying to be on 12 different platforms to say that you're there, or you can spend your time on the platforms that you can find your audience on, that you can share with it. And maybe it's just 1 or 2 platforms. For me personally, I'm just on Twitter and LinkedIn mainly. I have Instagram and some other platforms, but my focus are those 2 platforms, because I find that's where my audience is, and where I can be relatable, I can share my expertise, and I'm able to be seen as what I want to be known for. The person who's helping from a career perspective, providing that professional development. So I really want to enforce to your audience that you don't have to be all things to all people everywhere. That's not necessary. What you can do is find the place where you can organically share your content and build relationships, because that's how you grow your network and help to perpetuate your personal brand.
Absolutely. When you talk about being present on multiple platforms, one question I think a lot of people have is, do we maintain a consistent definition of our personal brand on all those platforms, or can we have different goals of our personal brand on each of them?
So I think you can have different goals. So for your audience's benefit, I love sneakers. Sneakers is something I'm so super passionate about. I have a huge collection of sneakers, and people would think, well, hey, you're a career coach. What are you doing with all these tennis shoes in your closet? But it's just something that I like. And what I have found is by sharing that on specific platforms, that has helped to attract people to even the career coaching aspect because they find me to be relatable. So someone
Yeah.
who may be in the apparel and footwear industry, they may come to me to talk about advice for their next step because they
Hmm.
see that it's a conversation I can have with them. So that's the perspective for say Twitter. But on LinkedIn, that platform, the clients that are there are looking specifically for job search, they're looking for specific information. So I'm able to share a different side of my personal brand about the career coaching, but it doesn't have to be everything. So it just depends on who the audience is on whatever platform that you're trying to connect with, and you can kind of tailor your presence on those platforms.
Yeah, and I follow that too because people think that I talk about personal branding all the time, but I do play ukulele too. And what I do is I upload ukulele covers on YouTube. I have a separate playlist over there.
Right.
So these are just decisions that you yourself make to convey which part of yourself you want to expose to which audience of yours, depending on the platform. So that is totally fine.
And I wanted to just make sure that people remember that you're a whole person. You have different sides, you have different facets, different
Yeah.
interests. You don't have to be the same thing on every, you can have different interests. That's okay. That's what makes you you, and that's what makes people relate to you. Like I said on Twitter, people will relate to the fact that I can talk about a career tip, but then I can talk about I just got this amazing pair of sneakers. Just for your own reference, while we're talking, I have a pair of sneakers sitting right next to me. So,
Wow.
so that's the kind of thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to be multifaceted. That's what'll attract people to you.
Yeah, because through personal branding, you're telling your own story, and your story does not have just one side. It does not have only your work or only just your hobbies. It has to be a mix of everything. So that's
Absolutely,
how people
absolutely.
would actually get to know you, and that's how you would build an authentic brand so that anyone can relate to you and implicitly trust you through all of that.
And you make a really good point there. Personal branding is also about your personal story. It's, people try so hard to curate this view of them, but the fact is your personal brand should be about your personal story and how you got to where you are today and what it is you want to achieve and be known for. So sharing those different sides of yourself, also share more of your story so that you're kind of letting people in a little bit so
Hmm.
that they can build a deeper connection with you as well.
And I think a lot of us, we feel that our story is not very unique. We feel that our story is similar to a lot of others in the world. But it's only after we begin sharing our story that we truly understand how much impact we can make and how many people we can help. So the first thing that I would encourage anyone to get started on their personal branding journey is to start sharing your story. And through that, you will have so many revelations along the way that you would understand which is the aspect that you would eventually want to help people on.
Right, right. I mean, and that's what I tell people when I even talk about my story about how I started Rock Career Development.
Hmm.
I was working in finance and I got into recruiting, and I just noticed the performance of Black candidates and how they were or were not performing, and
Hmm.
that was something that resonated with me as a Black woman, and that told me that I wanted to get involved. And so that has nothing to do with finance. That has nothing to do with what I studied. But it was something that I saw that impacted me, and I wanted to then transition to creating an impact. And what that story has been able to do has been able to help me to connect with whether it's other career coaches or other professionals who say, hey, that's me, or that's been my struggle. And so it opens up that line of communication and dialogue, and then people can relate to you a lot better.
So now that we've talked about personal branding, one essential aspect that I want to cover here is how does personal branding help someone in job hunting? Because when you
So
when you talk about job hunting, right, there are these two approaches. One is where you just send out your resume to a lot of recruiters, you upload it on a lot of sites, but then eventually only you might send out 200 mails and you might get a reply for only 3 interviews that get set up after that. And that is a very inefficient way of doing it, because when you have a personal brand, you can stand out, and maybe that can be a good approach to job hunting. So tell us how someone can use personal branding to actually share their story and get better at getting hired?
Sure. So when you think about really good brands, there are brands that you are attracted to, right? They don't necessarily have to push something in your face and force you to buy it. So if you
Right.
think about Apple, Apple is a master at putting out their products, and they've got the branding that no matter what they put out, they could put out Apple branded oxygen and people would go and buy it. But it's because of how they've positioned their brand. A
Hmm.
brand is something that attracts people. So if you think about how you can position yourself from a personal branding perspective, what are you putting out that can attract people to you? So let's take LinkedIn for an example. Are you on the LinkedIn platform with a robust profile that shows what you offer, what's your skill set, what your accomplishments have been, what value you've created in your industry? Because at that point, you're not just blindly sending out something. You've created a place where recruiters or hiring managers can stop for themselves as they're looking for candidates, and they're looking at, wow, this person, clearly has the skills we need. They're passionate about what we're looking for. Let us reach out. And so versus you just coldly emailing and hoping that someone's going to respond to you. So that's really how you can start to use it in your personal in your career search journey, is that start to put together how you want to be seen, especially in the online marketplace, because that's really where a lot of folks are looking for candidates now. You're not mailing in things anymore, but on LinkedIn, on social media, and it's not just about your profile either. Are you putting out content that's valuable? So if you're in data science and you've got some skills there, if you've got a PhD or what have you, are you putting out content that could resonate with a hiring manager? It's like, hey, we had that problem, and I like the fact that this person has already created a solution for this, or they've already done this research. And that may create a conversation that you can get a recruiter or somebody to reach out to you to say, well, let's have a further discussion. So it's about what you're putting out there to attract people to you. That can help you. So while you're applying, of course, apply for jobs and submit your applications. But you can get yourself a leg up if you start to provide value and provide content and show people what you know. There's no value to keeping your knowledge on your resume and just sending it out there. Share it with the world so that people can see it, so that they then can be attracted to you and say, well, yeah, I want to get that person for an interview. I love what they said here, or it seems that they've got the skills looking at their profile. Maybe we should have more of a discussion. And then the last thing I'll mention is, networking with professionals on that platform and creating organic conversations. So whether it's engaging with posts that someone is talking about, and then because once you engage with posts, that shows that you can have communication, but it also is I call it the cheat code of showing off your knowledge a little bit, because you can respond to someone and showcase what you know about the topic they're talking about. And then it also creates a door perhaps for a warm connection. Like you can send them an invite to say, hey, loved your post on so-and-so, would love a chance to connect with you. Then you can set up a virtual Zoom call or something for an informational interview. So you create all these warm connections where people have seen your expertise, they see what you want to be known for, versus you blindly hoping that someone's going to respond to you.
And this would be a much efficient approach to job hunting, because once you do it, you're able to stand out through your personal brand. You're able to already prove what they are looking for, and then it's just a matter of scheduling the interview and getting that opportunity. At least it can help you land that opportunity, and once you have that, then you can simply ace it and get the job.
Absolutely. Because you remember, a resume is a static piece of paper. It's just one piece of paper. They can't see your face. They can't see your energy. They can't get any of that. But if they're constantly seeing you kind of the whole person, like I said, to a platform like LinkedIn, for example, it's like, hey, not only does this person have the expertise, but I think that their personality or their perspective is something that we need in our company culture. Because don't forget, companies don't just hire for expertise. They hire people who fit their culture. They hire for people who can assimilate quickly and who can add perspective and value. So it's not just about what's on paper. So when they're able to see all of that already, again, that's the attraction phase versus, again, you hoping that someone's going to open your email or application.
Yeah, and let's say that you are actually able to message that person and that person visits your profile. So another aspect to be covered here is that your LinkedIn profile has to be optimized. So tell us a little more about that. How can someone optimize their LinkedIn profile so that if some potential recruiter is looking at their profile, then they're already impressed, and in one snapshot, without scrolling a lot, they can get a good understanding of what that candidate has and is good.
I love talking about LinkedIn. So So the thing about LinkedIn is it's almost similar to a resume where they don't have a ton of time to read all the way to the bottom right away. So you've
Absolutely.
got to catch them with a headline. The seeking opportunities and looking for jobs, forget it. You've got to hit them with what your value is, and you get 120 characters there. So use that wisely to say, this is what I offer, this is the value I bring, boom. So that's the first thing. So then the next thing is your about section. People copy and paste their resume summary there. Let's not do that. What you really should be doing there is creating a conversation about, hey, this is what I offer in a more holistic way. I typically write those summaries in first person for my clients because it creates a more conversational, relatable aspect. So use that section to really showcase who you are and any major accomplishments so they don't have to read all the way down. So that's the second thing. Then let's not discount that featured section because people just skip to the work experience. But the featured section, if you've been featured in anything at work or in the media or you've done a white paper or anything like that, you want to make sure that you're linking all of those things in your featured section because they want to see, well, you say that you have this expertise, but do you have what I like to call receipts? Like, what is it that you've actually done that I can tangibly put my hands on? So use the featured section. And then when you get into the work experience, then you can really start to, don't just copy and paste your resume, add a little bit more flavor to the jobs that you've had, add in some additional accomplishments, add in some of the additional groups that you've worked in, because LinkedIn gives you more space to expand on your work experience versus just the bullet points, the 3 bullet points that you would take from your resume. And then one of the other things, I'll just mention 2 more things. There's a section at the bottom for accomplishments on your profile. You want to make sure that you're maximizing that. If you've done training, languages, patents, publications, you want to make sure that you're using that and maximizing that to its full value, because again, it shows more of your receipts as to why you're a standout candidate versus someone else. And then the last thing I'll say is that, try your best to get cheerleaders. So if you put skills on your profile or you can be recommended by other connections, get your recommendations and endorsements, because again, it's nice when you can talk about yourself, but it's even better if someone else can say it about you. That's why publications are important, as well as getting some of those endorsements or recommendations. So those are just a few quick things that folks can think about as they're trying to optimize their profile.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought this point up, because generally what happens is when I look at a lot of candidates' profile, one common thing that I see in their about section is demonstrated history of working in this technology. And I'm so tired of reading that sentence again and again that I understand that you just copy pasted this sentence and just modified it based on the technologies that you are working in. And that shows me that you are not at all ready to put any effort in showing what you are worth of and why I should consider you. And when you don't give me that impression, I would never reach out to you. So make sure that we have to make sure that we network well. And once the recruiter comes to our profile, everything should be, they should be able to see the effort that we have put in. And it doesn't have to be just one day that you do it. You can do it over time, but you have to build up your LinkedIn profile slowly. And another thing I think that they have to focus on is the headshot that the LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely. So profiles that have photos, I think the percentage is that they get either 21 times more views if you have a profile photo. And then you can also update your background header, so it's not that awful blue banner that LinkedIn has. You can put something there. And what I like to tell people for that background banner is put something that may be relevant to your industry or you in action. So if you're leading a conference, speaking, leading a project, that's also an option there as well. But make that impactful. And the one thing I'll just tell people, when you're putting together your profile, think about it as someone's going to give me $1 million if this profile is put together, if this is the best profile they see. And so think of that mindset, like, what would I do? How good would I make this profile if I knew that someone was going to hand me $1 million once I was done? And so having that mindset will allow you to put your best foot forward. Because remember, you're looking for the opportunity to change your life in a new career. So you want to give it every effort, every opportunity to make it better.
And I'll root back to your initial advice on this, that it might be overwhelming to do all of it at once. So you don't have to do it in one day. You can take a month. You can dedicate a month towards improving your LinkedIn profile, and then one day you can look at the experiences section. One day you look at your awards, because all of that can be very time consuming and it can be very strenuous. But if you are ready to take out that time each day, maybe 5 minutes every day, but you look concentrate on one section at a time, and then do it, put it up all together, so that in the end it's evident how much effort you've put into it, and it impresses anyone who is landing on it for the first time. And
Right.
so as a person who doesn't know you at all, if I look at your profile, I should be able to feel the connection. I should be able to understand, okay, this person is passionate about this. And when I saw your profile for the first time, without talking to you, I already knew what you were passionate about. I already knew that you were featured in so many different publications, and I already had this respect for you because I knew that you were helping out people. You were doing all of this in your free time apart from managing your full-time job, right? So
Right.
before talking to you, that already talked a lot about your brand, and that's how we connected in the first place.
Right. And that's and so you make a point there. You want to create a place how for people to connect with you. So if you're thinking about breaking it up, I would say at least create a headline and an about section that can bring people in, so that at least, you know, because even if you've copied and pasted your resume, it's not great, but at least something is there. And so
Yeah.
then you can dedicate your time to a headline and an about section that can draw somebody in, so that you have that connection already, and then you can go and refine the rest. Because like I said, at least you've got something to start with. So, you know, and so that's what I would say, because you want to be able to set the tone, so when someone's reading your about section, by the end of it, they say, okay, I know what this person is about. I know what they offer. I know whether or not I want to read the rest of their profile or reach out to them for a conversation.
Yeah, and that forms a baseline of the conversation that you would have with that person thereafter, because now
Right.
the other person already knows you've made your impression, the first impression, and then it's all about maintaining that network and engaging with their content, talking to them, and then you can actually build a meaningful connection. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and when we try to find jobs for ourselves, one common thing that we often forget is that the other person is also human. And when we can actually connect with that person rather than simply a mechanical exchange of emails that, okay, this is my resume, when is the interview? Okay, the interview is done. Am I selected? When we change our approach from that and when we look at it from a human perspective, then I think we can change a lot of things and the other person can actually feel it. And that
Absolutely.
itself would let you stand out, because a lot of people do that.
Absolutely. And because you remember, recruiters, they're looking through candidates all day, you
Yeah.
know, and so it can get to be a rut for them. So seeing that someone is actually trying to engage with them, and versus just saying, here's my resume, take me. It's like, I'm a human being. You know, I want to get, you know, I'm not just a machine that you hand stuff to. And
I'm
so
not
trying,
your tool. I'm not your key to the next job.
exactly. I'm a person with real feelings. I'm a person with that you can engage with in a real way. And
Yeah,
people, you know, they discount that human touch now because we're so digital, but that human touch goes such a long way.
absolutely. And I think now, let's say that people are doing all of these and they actually get the chance to share their resume. So let's talk about the resume next. As a resume strategist, what do you think are the elements of a perfect resume or an effective resume? Or how do they customize it based on the job that they're applying for?
Sure. So I tell people to start with the job description. So because the job description is really the cheat code, because they're telling you pretty much exactly what they're looking for. So
Yeah.
as you look at putting your resume together and you're looking at the job description, you should be making sure that, you know, as you're formulating the content, do I have what's in this job description in here? And then that can help you to tweak, you know, what you need to. So in terms of essential elements for a good resume, the first one is kind of that top section, the summary or summary of qualifications, because
Yeah.
that needs to be strong. That's prime real estate. That's what they're going to read first after your name. So you want to make sure that that's powerful. And in just a few sentences, you can communicate, this is why you need to talk to me. This is why you need to read the rest of this document, and then you need to talk to me. So then that brings them in. And then I always recommend having a skills section on there, or areas of expertise or core competencies. The reason for that is it kind of gives a quick checklist of things that you have on your tool belt, but also it's a great place to put your keywords. So just in case you have to submit it through an online platform, that it can also be read, it'll read those keywords. And then when you're putting your work experience together, your professional job history, you want to make sure that you're focusing on your accomplishments, because too often people will say, okay, if I was a bank teller, that I greeted the customers and I collected cash and I did this. And so it's a list of an online job description that you could copy from Indeed, but it doesn't tell me what impact you created, what value you delivered, what results you provided. So as you're framing each job, think through, what impact did I create? I think 2 words. When you're putting anything on your resume, think 2 words. So what? So if you put anything on your resume and you're thinking about it and you're reading it, it's like, okay, well, what's the so what of this? Why should anybody care? And that will really help you to tailor your resume to make sure that the content is impactful. And then the last couple of things I'll just say is that when you're putting kind of technical skills on there, don't be afraid to showcase, all of the technical skills you have. Don't just stick with, Microsoft Office or something. If you've got all those technical skills, for different programming, project management software, financial software, make sure that you're highlighting that, and put in awards and recognition, leadership experience, and things that help to separate you from the pack. Because even if people have your work experience, if you've done major things in the community or won awards or something, that could be the differentiation between you and somebody else, or at least help to be a starting point in an interview conversation to say, oh, I did that too when I was back in college or something. So you want to make sure that you have additional elements on your resume, that it's not just, okay, I'm only work and only education. Show that you have some additional expertise outside of that as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times we have this generic resume that we send out to every company, especially when we're doing this, the first approach that I told you in job hunting, where we are sending out resumes blindly. One thing that happens is we don't customize it based on the job description. And that would simply mean that someone looks at your resume and says, this is not some resume to be considered, let's reject this.
Right.
That has to be done. Even if you have a generic resume where a lot of things can be reused, but at least the initial part of it, the summary and what technologies you're choosing to expose to them that you are aware of, and how are you customizing it based on the job description, that would be the very first step of looking at a resume, right? And that makes a lot of difference.
Absolutely, because like I said at the beginning, that really is the cheat code, because that's exactly what they're looking for. Remember, when a requisition is out there, it's because they have a specific need in their organization. It's not just something general. They have a specific spot they want to fill. So if you go in there with all this extra content that's not relevant, it derails them from figuring out, okay, well, does this person have the expertise we need or not? So if you take the time to tailor it to say, for this job description and company, this is the skill that I offer, then they can read and say, yep, they've got what we need. This may be the person we want to go ahead and interview. It's just that simple.
Absolutely. One other thing that I recently read is how you name that resume also matters, because and I had been a part of an interview process a few days back. That was my very first time that I was interviewing someone and I was not on the other side of the table. So the one thing that I saw was, when I reached out to candidates, or when the candidates reached out to me, they used to send me this resume that was named as resume 1, resume 2, resume 3. And what happened was, I would simply download it, and when I would look at it later, I would get very confused. What is this resume? Who is this resume? Whose resume is this, and which is the person that we're talking about here? So that created a whole lot of confusion, especially when I forwarded it to my manager. That confusion simply cascaded. So how you name your resume, keep it very simple. You can just write resume, and your name at least has to be there, because if you don't do that, it can simply get lost in a pool of resumes.
Absolutely. And people forget that point. It's the little things that can help to set you apart too. So even if you have the best resume, but it's resume 1, it gets lost in someone's inbox and no one sees it again, because they can't match it to your application, because your name isn't in it. So at a minimum, your name needs to be part of your resume title, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and another aspect that I would want you to comment on is the template of that resume.
Absolutely. So I'm a fan of less is more. Yeah. I know that in 2020, a lot of these kind of like Canva templates, they've got graphs and charts and icons, but what ends up happening is that you're shrinking the amount of content you can share, because you've got all these different pieces, and then God forbid these icons move, it could cover the text, and then you're trying to scan it. If it's the person has to scan it, you're missing something. So I would say focus on your content first and create a clean, simple design, so that someone can easily pick it up and read it. And they can read it on their phone, they can read it on their computer, their tablet. Make sure that it's something that can be transferable to any of those platforms, whether it's in Word format or PDF. You don't want it to be that anytime you send your resume out that you have to hope that they're opening it up in a particular format, or else it's all going to be messed up. So I tell people, focus on content first with an attractive design, but one that's still simple and it's not too busy, because a recruiter's only going to spend about a few seconds looking at it. So if they have to try to figure out, well, what does this graph tie to, and what does this chart, and what's this icon, they're not going to get through all of the content. So less is definitely more.
And talking about the resume length, what do you think is the ideal resume length that you can send out for an interview?
So it used to be, well, just keep it to one page, but then people took that to an extreme and they're doing like 8-point font and 0.1 margins and all that kind of stuff. I tell my clients, if someone's coming to me to coaching and I'm not doing their resume, I tell them that if you're going to do the resume, make sure it's long enough to convey your value, but keep in mind, someone doesn't have a ton of time to read this. And so typically, I think if you have if it's a standard kind of corporate professional, I'm not talking about federal resumes or anything like that, or CVs, but like a standard resume, typically about 2 pages should get you there. Because very rarely would you need a 3rd page unless you're truly at a level in your career where you've got all these accolades and all this experience that's really relevant to the job. I think 2 pages is usually enough for you to say what you need to say, because as you go further back in your career, companies aren't necessarily needing to know what you did 20 years ago at any level of detail. You can possibly just list the company and the role, and that's about it, just to show that you have the experience. But you don't have to list long bullet points for everything. So I would highly, and I also recommend just getting rid of irrelevant experience. If it doesn't apply to this job, take it off. That way you can shorten it as well. So typically I think about 2 pages should get you there.
Yeah, and it's as you said, it's about correctly filtering what you want to project and what is relevant for that particular job. Because I'll tell you some of the resumes that I received, and they had this under achievements. It had this written that first prize in the team basketball in 8th standard, in 8th grade, and this person is applying for maybe a very senior position in the industry. So that is not relevant to me. That maybe you could write in your hobbies that basketball is your hobby and you love to play that sport. That's okay, but to learn that person had got first prize when that person was in 8th grade in the basketball team, it doesn't make much sense to me. So things like that, which might not impress someone and which might not be very relevant and also might look silly at times, we can definitely optimize our resume to not include things like that.
And it goes back to the so what, right? So if you apply that same so what to every single thing on your resume, when you're putting on that, the fact that you ran grandma's lemonade stand, back in high school, you can think about, what does this really have to do with the job I'm applying to? So you think twice before putting it on there if you ask that so what question. So that will help you to determine how long your resume really needs to be. Does it really need to be 2 pages, or can 1 page get you there? Or if you're at 3 or 4 pages, is all the stuff on those last few pages really relevant, or can I shrink that and get that onto 2 pages?
Yeah, and I think that's a very cool trick of looking at optimizing your resumes. This so what technique, that's a very effective one. So I learned something too today. I'm going to do that in my resume. I'm going to go back today, look at my resume, ask myself all of these questions and edit it. Absolutely. Because at any point of time, we should have our resume all prepared.
Yes, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, which means that if someone comes to you for an opportunity right now for your dream job, you shouldn't have to scramble. You shouldn't have to be asking a friend to help you get your resume together. If you always have your resume, your LinkedIn, your cover letter ready, no matter who's coming to you for an opportunity, it's like, yep, I'll go ahead and send that over to you. It shouldn't be like, oh, can I get till tomorrow or the end of the week? Or always have your stuff ready.
Absolutely. And now the next question that I'm going to ask you is $1 million question, that when we talk about our achievements, how do we project them in our resume? And let's say that if I'm applying for a data scientist job, but my personal brand in my personal brand, I have a lot of achievements that I've helped so many professionals. Maybe I've mentored them to build their own personal brand. Now the question is, are these achievements relevant? Should I mention it in my resume, or should I even mention it when I am talking to the person in the interview?
So I think it depends on if your personal branding items can tie to the job description and what you're going into. So
Right.
let's say that for this data scientist role, you
Hmm.
provided training and mentorship for other data scientists because that's something that you were passionate about as part of your personal brand.
Right.
That's something that you could tie in because it shows that you were, whether it's leadership and coaching skills and the ability to develop others, because then they can think of you for, it's not just that you can do the work, but you can train others and equip them for success to build productivity and ultimately profitability for an organization. So I think I think that the real answer to that is, can you tie that to
To your job.
your day job? And so for me, how I tie the career coaching piece is that the fact that I've provided coaching and mentorship, not just to my own direct teams, but also others in the organization, which helps to show leadership, which helps to set me apart from other people who may just be kind of doing their jobs day to day and just focus on their own desk.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, let's say that this is one context that we've talked about, but let's consider another context, that now you're in an interview and the other person is asking you, tell me what your strengths are. So
Right.
how do we project our accomplishments then?
And so the key then goes back to remembering what they're looking for in this conversation. Yet they're looking at a whole person, they want to look at fit, but they also at the underpinning, what value are you going to bring to us? And so as you're thinking about your accomplishments, even if it's from a personal brand perspective, are those accomplishments things that would bring them value? In the context of the role that you're going to be in. So again, if we go back to that data scientist example, if you're saying, tell me about yourself, and you've had an opportunity to mentor in your community, 50 different data scientists to find opportunities at other companies, you can bring that in there. So even if it's not part of your day job, it's like, hey, I've got such expertise and knowledge that I've been able to do this for 50 other people and get them jobs. That's huge, because they know that you've got this big old brain that you can bring that value to their company and hopefully mentor their data scientists and get their performance up to speed.
Yeah, true. That's very nice that you've mentioned this. You always have to think about what value can you add to that organization, or what value can you add to that job role. Would it be something that will be viewed as positive for that particular position? And the same applies to when you are applying it in your resumes too. That what
Absolutely.
accomplishments you choose to project are the ones that are relevant and can actually speak for that particular role and make you stand out. And as long as you can answer that question, and if it's a yes, then you add it over there.
Absolutely. It's the so what. When you go into the interview, it's back to the so what again. That so what can guide your entire career search journey, because it's like, someone's looking for, what can you do for me? And obviously you're doing an interview of them as well to see if it's a fit. But when they're talking to you, it's like, well, what can you do for me? What is it that you're going to bring to me? So anything that you share, you should have that lens of so what.
Yeah, and let's say that we've talked about all the aspects of job hunting. So let's say that we finally land that interview, and now you're in that interview. So when the first question that we are given when we're in an interview is, tell me about yourself. And what a lot of people don't realize is that's the very first impression that you can make in that interview. So they don't prepare for that question and they give a very vague and generic answer, and that kind of sets off the interviewer, because they are no more interested, and they might even decide that this is not the right person because they can't even talk about their achievements confidently. So tell us how someone can ace this tell me about yourself question.
Okay. So what I love about this question is it's truly open-ended, because they're literally just asking you, tell me about yourself. And so that is your sales pitch. That is your elevator pitch, your sales pitch, your hook. That is how you're going to get someone, interested in talking to you further. And so if we go back to the $1 million example, I love using money because I'm a finance person. So if you go back to the $1 million example, think about it this way. You have to pitch someone for $1 million. How you present yourself is going to get you that $1 million. And so if you say, well, I'm Julia and I grew up in Brooklyn and I have a car and I love ice cream. It's like, well, okay, all that's well and good, but that doesn't tell you anything that's valuable. But if you come in there and share, these are the skill sets. This is the skill set I have. Again, that 30 to 60 second elevator pitch. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is the value I bring. these are the organizations I've impacted and at what level. And you can do that in 30 to 60 seconds. That's what they're looking for, because that will help to shape the other questions they ask you to follow up on.
Absolutely, yeah.
But B, also give that immediate impression of that person's polished and knows their stuff, but also they've already created the value that we want here in our organization. Because if I go in, because right now in my day job, I'm helping to manage financial project implementations. If I talk about the fact that that right now I'm leading this financial project implementation for earnings of $4 billion, if they're looking for somebody that can say, well, hey, we need somebody to help us manage our earnings reconciliation. Okay, check. so it's that kind of thing. Who you are, what you do, what value you offer, and who you've impacted. You can have that in 30 to 60 seconds, and that will help you to ace that question.
Yeah, and as you said, a recruiter always has this background process going on, that is this person fit for the culture that we're looking for. So a lot of times people give these very mechanical answers where they only talk about the skills that are required over there, but they don't talk about their own hobbies, strengths, interests. And I think you can maybe add 1 or 2 lines towards the end where you talk about that, what you do personally, because they want to understand you as a person. Again, we don't have to forget the fact that we are a human too, right?
Absolutely. And so and that's the thing, they're looking for value and fit. And so once you're able to communicate that, then you can open up that dialogue to say, I've also done this and that, as well as from a personal perspective. So if you talk about where you grew up or something that you're interested in, because then that gives some context. And here's a cheat code for that as well. If you have a chance to look up your interviewer in advance or your recruiter in advance, and you can see that you have things in common, that would be the thing that you would bring up. So you could say that, I also enjoy so-and-so, because let's say that person, let's go back to your basketball example. If the person says that they were in basketball, or they're in some sort of league after work, and you like basketball as well, you can say, hey, I'm also a basketball champion and so forth. That creates an automatic conversation. Right. So that's another cheat code as well. As like, if you can do the research and there's some tie points between you and the interviewer from a personal perspective, that can help to help you to build rapport with your interviewer.
Yeah, and similar to this question, the question that is asked at the end, that do you have any questions for us? So that is another of your chance to show the recruiter that they can take a chance on you, and that they can fight the battle for you to get hired, right? So what would your advice be on that particular question? Because a lot of times people, they don't research on that particular company that they're applying for, and they don't customize that question. So this is the part where we can actually show the others how much research we have done on that company.
You make a good point there. That last question is how you can make or break an interview. Right. Because you can be coasting and going and it's great, and you get to that last question and either you say, oh, I don't have any questions, which is a no-no, or you spend that segment saying, well, tell me more about the benefits. How am I going to get paid? And how much time can I take off when I first start? And like, when you focus on all the things that you want to get, it's an immediate turnoff, because it's like they're looking for value that you're going to bring on. And so if it looks like you're already just trying to suck things out of the company instead of bringing value, they're already turned off by you. So some of the things that you want to focus on, again, is doing the research about the company and what they offer, and that way you can ask questions. But also doing the research from a marketplace perspective. What's happening from a current events perspective? Are there any deals that they've done recently? Have they been in the headlines for anything positive? Those are things that you can bring up and try to ask questions about. Also ask questions about the job itself. What are the success milestones, or what are the immediate challenges that I'm going to have to face in the first 30 days or 60 days? What qualities will someone who's going to be successful in this role, what qualities will they have? And then one other part that I really like is, again, to build a rapport with the interviewer. Ask the interviewer questions about their own career, especially if you've done your research on them. Oh, I've seen that you've been with the company for 10 years. Can you tell me a little bit about what's kept you here over the past 10 years? Or, what excites you about the future of the company? Those kinds of things can help you to show your true interest in an interview and wanting to work with a company. And that, again, can help to set you apart. Just as a quick example, I tell people, think about it like a date. Imagine if you go go out on a date and, and you're asking this person all these questions and you're interested and you're trying to learn. And then the other person just sits across the table from you and says, this was great. Have a good night. You'd be so upset because it's like, wait, this person doesn't have the same interest in me. And so it's the same thing for a company. They're showing interest in you by asking you all these questions and bringing you in for an interview. You also then have to show them that you are interested by asking them really good questions.
Yeah, and this is a question that you simply cannot dodge, because I've seen a lot of candidates do that too. Oh, no, I don't have any questions for you. And there's no bigger turn off than that.
And let's not forget, interviews are two-way streets. It's not just about you presenting yourself to the company. Though that question section is a good opportunity for you to vet, do I even want to work here? Let me ask the right questions. And so don't squander that opportunity to learn more about the organization, to see if it's a fit for you as well.
And that's a great point that you make there, because it's a two-way thing. So this is your chance to assess what company you want to be a part of. And I think one definite thing that they should ask in these times is how the company is navigating through the pandemic. Are they doing something for the employees to bring value to them? Are they doing something to the employees to help them get through this? And all of that. So these are kind of the aspects that they should consider when they are trying to be a part of a new company.
Absolutely. And because again, if you're thinking about joining this company, you want to make sure that this is a fit for you and your values. Is this a place that has integrity? Is this a place that will keep people safe? Or do they value their employees? Those are all things you want to vet before you get started, because by the time you get in, now it's too late, right? So the question is, do the vetting to make sure that all of these different things that they're truly taking care of, especially from a pandemic standpoint. You want to make sure that they're being considerate of their employees, but also keeping them safe, and making sure they have that mindset. Because do you want to work for a place that doesn't value their employees, doesn't care if they're safe, doesn't care if they have the resources they need? Is that a place that you want to build your career?
Absolutely. Once we are able to assess these aspects, I think we are able to create a happy place for us when we are eventually joining that company.
Exactly.
That's very important. So that's a very important aspect of job hunting, which we often forget, that we have to value ourselves throughout the process too.
Absolutely.
With this, I would also like to tell our viewers that Julia has this very interesting series called One Thing, where she breaks down the entire process of how you can get your dream job and how you can elevate your credibility at your workplace. She has this One Thing series where every day she shares one video on LinkedIn, and she gives you that one tip to get better at job hunting, to get better in your career. And that's a series that I'm following with all my interest. It's because what happens is when we look at job hunting, it's very overwhelming. It's very complex at first. And there are so many aspects that so many people are telling us all the time that we don't find a direction. We are totally confused. But through your series, you're breaking all of that down into these systematic tidbits and sharing it one at a time each day. So that gives a very good mindset to anyone who wants to get started. And I would recommend everyone to go check out Julia's profile. I'll link all of that in the description below, but definitely go check out Julia's series, and you'll be able to get a lot of insights out of it. And you already know how many insights she can offer throughout this talk. She has some very interesting stories to share. So Julia, thank you so much for your time today. I initially started with a set of 5 to 6 questions that I wanted to ask you, but throughout the stories and experiences that you've shared, I started asking up these follow-up questions because you had so much to offer. You had such interesting stories to offer that I wanted to learn more, and I personally have learned a lot from this. So I hope it can benefit everyone out there who's trying to get their dream job and who's trying to be better at their career. Let this be a reminder for all of you that don't ever give up, and continuously try to find yourself. Eventually you will get there.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for having me. I'm excited that we were able to have this conversation. Thank you.
Did you enjoy the video? If you did, please let me know in the comments below what you liked the most about our conversation. And if you found value in it, please subscribe to my channel. Good luck on finding your dream job. I hope you get it soon.